given in Colorado. And some people get that to show friends. But the book is 700 pages, but it's 111 chapters. It's a reference work, so you don't have to read it from start to finish. If you want to know about Valerie Jarrett, read about her chapter, Van Jones or Hilda Solis or John Holdren, whatever. So it's very easy to read. So I urge you to get this book. It'll be a classic in later years, I'm sure, but it helps fund what I do, and I've been here for 8 months this year just pounding around.
How much?
The books are $35, ma'am. $35. Yes, sir. But you take questions, Sir Bill?
Beg your pardon?
You're taking questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Conservative group, John Birch Society, since 1959 in this fray. Now, I have a DVD, Dreams from My Real Father, pointing to Frank Marshall Davis as Barack Obama's real father. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm not convinced. I've got two problems with the DVD. I think there's strong evidence. He presents strong evidence, but the guy Jared Gilbert also he states in that video that Stanley Dunham, the grandfather, was a member of the CIA. Yet he offers no evidence for that statement. He also claims that Mr. Obama was involved with the May 19 terrorist group when he was in New York, an offshoot of the Weather Underground. But again, he presents no evidence for that. So he's done great documentary work. There's a lot of evidence I've never seen before. But if he just said, yes, this strong evidence that it could be the father, I would have accepted that, but I think he goes overboard. So I'd give him about 6 out of 10 for that documentary. States things as fact that he can't prove and overstates the case, but he's got a lot of great stuff in there. That's what I would say. Yes, the man in the back.
You were saying that the communists want to take down our military. Where do you think we stand in our military now, along with like DHS and CIA as well?
Well, CIA is basically always been run by liberals. They're recruited out of Harvard and Yale, and the people think the CIA is an anti-communist organisation. It's not. Never has been. They started with more than 100 communists as staff members in the OSS days. Department of Homeland Security, like in the old days, they used to have, every major city would have its own police intelligence unit. It was a stratified, decentralised thing, and it was very effective at what it did. And that was basically destroyed by the communists in Congress in the 1970s. They destroyed the House Un-American Activities Committee, the Senate Internal Security Committee, and all the police intelligence departments all over the country. Made your country very vulnerable. And now they've got this big Homeland Security bureaucracy that in the wrong hands could become a new Gestapo. So I would like to see the intelligence gathering powers of Homeland Security diffuse back to the states and the cities. I think it's very dangerous as it is now. Yes.
Is there any evidence for the assertions on the internet that Axelrod is actually the great-grandson of Leon Trotsky? I've seen it a couple of times, but not from any sources.
I don't know. His family was communist going way back. And there's a tantalising reference to an Axelrod who served with Trotsky in the Soviet regime, who then moved to America, but I haven't yet established the proper connection. Look, it wouldn't surprise me, but I can't prove it. I'd love to be able to prove it. Yes.
You're probably going to dive over that table and keep me up when I say this, but I have a friend who's trying to convince him to vote. He's not going to vote, and he says there's very little difference between the two parties. He says it doesn't matter who gets in, because they're both controlled by the same power sources. And I think a lot of people admit that many politicians are controlled by special people above them, and our politicians are hood ornaments. What would I say to somebody? As a Christian, I vote for life, therefore I'm going to vote for Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
But for other issues, I'd say I think you should vote Republican. He said, well, there's really no difference, or not that much difference between the two parties. What would you say to him to get him to listen?
Look, what I would say, okay, if you made that case 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, I'd say yes, because there's conservative Republicans and there's liberal, there's a big crossover, and both of them were heavily influenced by the Council on Foreign Relations. Both of them, so there wasn't a lot. But in the last 20 years, the Democrats have been taken over by the communists. Basically, it is now a communist-led party. Now, Ann Coulter said it very well. She said, "There's lots and lots of bad Republicans, but there's no good Democrats." That's the case now. The Democrat Party is totally a Marxist party now. And I believe that the influence of the Tea Party, the Ron Paul people, etc., have moved the Republican Party further to true conservatism than it has been for a long time. And I think after the election, that their job will be to fully take over the Republican Party. So the Republican Party is 60% rotten, 40% good. The Democrat Party is 95% rotten, 5% good. So there's a huge difference. And look at this. When Obama made his treasonous statements in Korea about dealing with the Russians, Mitt Romney got up and said the next day, "Russia is this country's #1 geopolitical foe." Not one Republican has had the guts to say that since Reagan. He gets it. So you've got a man who is basically working to destroy your military in the interest of the Russians, and a man who wants to restore your military to protect you from the Russians. Is that not a significant difference?
Thank you.
I'd like to take a swing at that one too. I saw somebody going through the blue folders. Back there, there's an article that's titled, "Throw Them All Out." Because every place that I've gone, and I've been out to about 70 tea parties and 912s, I hear that particular situation that you just described.
Yes, sir.
I went back to 1950 to look at what has transpired in terms of control of the federal government, looking at the House, the Senate, and the presidency. If you look at what's in that study back there, if you want to know how many years one party controlled the presidency, the Senate, and the House, you will find that the Republican Party only had it 4 yees out of those 6. Now, some people will say it's 6 because there was 5 months before this guy Lifford, switched from Republican to Democrat back in the Bush era. If you look at the Democrat Party, for the same period of time, they had those 3 powers 20 years. Second thing I looked at, how many times Senate and House. The Republicans get up to 10 years out of 62. The Democrats have 40 years out of 62. Then, if we learned anything about the first 2 years of Obama, you learn what a supermajority in the Senate can do. You don't have to have any agreement from the other party. You can shove it right down the American people's throat. So I said, how many of those 62 years did each party have the presidency, the House, and a supermajority in the Senate? You know how many times the Republicans have had that? 0. Every year, for 62 years, the Republicans had to get the Democrat agreeing to do anything, whether it be abortion or anything. How many years, and I kind of said this in my presentation, but I scooted by it to save time, do you think the Democrats have had the presidency, the House, and the supermajority in the Senate? 14. Trevor spoke of what happened in the 60s. I hit on it quickly as well. 8 of those 14 years were Kennedy and Johnson. And yeah, you got Medicare, you got Medicaid, you got the Vietnam War, you got the Bay of Pigs. In addition, you got aid to everything, you got the welfare state, all coming out of that period of time, plus a cultural degradation in drugs, education. 1962, we took prayer out of the schools. All of that happened in those supermajority years of the Democrat Party in the 60s. 8 of the 14. The next 4, I did talk about in my talk, were Jimmy Carter's years. The Community Reinvestment Act, which led to the housing crisis, led to the collapse in our economy, directly. In addition to, we pulled the rug out from under the Shah of Iran. And look what we have there. How much does that cost us? Department of Education, Department of Energy, Panama Canal, how many do you want during Carter's era when he had a supermajority?
Exactly.
Now we got 2 years left, and what do you get in those 2 years? Obamacare and one of the most ridiculous regulatory bills that's ever been passed by anybody. And I think as of the last I heard, out of the 350 or 60 regulations, they managed in 2 years to write about 150. Fortunately for all of us. I'm sure if Obama gets a second term, they'll figure out how to write the rest. So when you look at what's happened in 62 years, there's a hell of a difference
Amen.
between what the
Amen.
Republicans have done and what the Democrats have done. And I am so tired of hearing about how the Republicans are just as progressive. Glenn Beck used to do that.
Yeah.
And it made my hair stand up. They're not just as progressive.
Right.
Every progressive caucus member is a Democrat. Every sponsor of the public option bill is a Democrat. Every person that voted for a debt ceiling increase with no spending cut was a Democrat last year. Right
Okay.
down the line.
Okay, well, Bill wants to take a question. We have to do a radio interview at 10, so anybody wants a copy of my book or the DVD, please come up and get it now, and I'm happy to sign them for you. Thank you.
But get that article, you guys.
By the way, thank both of you gentlemen, your knowledge is staggering. It's absolutely amazing what you guys